Mesdames, Messieurs, ladies and gentlemen, accueillons, please welcome, votre animateur préféré, your favorite host, Sean Starr.
Another episode of In the Car with Stars coming at you directly en face, en visage, with a native Montrealer that now finds himself in the 613, our nation's capital, from Ottawa. It's honestly one of my favorites. Eric Macramalla, longtime contributor, friend to the show, personal friend of ours, Mafioso Talk, friend of yours, friend of mine. Eric, welcome to In the Car with Starr, man. Good to see you in video form as opposed to our twice weekly audio on the radio chats on TSN 690.
Well, my man, it's always fun to connect with you, be it on the radio or be it on video. You know, it's always a different dynamic, right? If you can see someone, you can't see them, but irrespective of the platform, it's always great to chat with you, man. I love everything that you're doing. I've got a lot of respect for your entrepreneurial spirit and how you just continue to look for ways to connect with end users. I love that.
Dave 32, if you're listening back at In the Car with Starr headquarters, make sure you cut that little bit of audio. Let's isolate that. Let's get that out there to everybody who needs to consume your kind man, Eric. And, you know, you and I share a lot of things in common. Money is definitely not one of them, but our love dude for Montreal and sports. You're in Ottawa now. We'll talk about your journey that took you there and took you away from us. But you're a Montreal boy. Where were you raised?
I was raised in Côte-Saint-Luc. Oh, by the way, I'm doing this entire show in the trunk of Sean's car because we're in the car, but he's stuck me in the trunk. Yeah, I grew up at Côte-Saint-Luc, and so it was really interesting because my parents fled from Egypt. They were Coptic Christians, and at the time, war going on, and Coptic, Egyptians, as they are now, treated really poorly. So they fled. My father was a doctor in Egypt. He had just started. He was an intern, actually, and he had saved the life of a little girl whose father was a higher-ranking official in immigration. And so my father was going to be drafted into the war and ultimately would die along with his brothers. Wow. And so this guy pushed my dad and his older brother to the top of the list. They left. Within a week after leaving, the army will come to your house and draft you in person, right? Because oftentimes moms would hide the kids in the house so the army couldn't find them. And they trashed our house, or my parents' house, or my dad's house, looking for my dad. Couldn't find him because he was already in Canada and making his way to Montreal. And so they moved to Côte-Saint-Luc, and it lived there my entire life before I went off to school.
A very comfortable, safe place for the Gentile, right? I mean,
yeah, it was interesting. I mean, it's you flee Egypt and then you move to Côte-Saint-Luc. Our house was the color of limestone, which I guess is kind of sort of poetic since the pyramids were covered in limestone. And I remember I went to Lower Canada College, just the high school I went to. And people would ask me, "Hey, where do you live, Macramalla?" Or they would call me Macramalla. "Hey, Macramalla, where do you live?" I go, Côte-Saint-Luc. And they go, "No, seriously, where do you live?"
Yeah, you sure you live? You sure you know where you're from? But I mean, that's a wild, harrowing story. How old were you when you first learned of what your parents had to endure in order to get you over here and get your family over to the safe shore? How old were you when you were able to intellectually digest that?
Yeah, so I mean, I was born in Montreal along with my two older brothers, and we were told the story a number of times. I guess it probably sunk in, when I was probably 5 or 6, and understanding that the circumstances surrounding my parents' move to Canada were harrowing, but were not unique at that time. A lot of people come to Canada because they search for a better life, and this is why I've always said this. People complain about Canada. You don't know how good you have it here. This is the greatest country in the world. You have your healthcare, you have education, you've got a great infrastructure. It's an amazing country, but you can only really fully appreciate that either if you have fled or you love someone who has endured so much and has fled. A lot of places in the world are not great spots to live. Canada is amazing.
Your dad was an MD. How do you think, with what you're saying, how do you think he would react in today's world filled with pandemic and uncertainty and distrust of modern medicine and media, mainstream media?
It's interesting because I have thought about that. And, because he was a urologist and he was effectively a scientist at heart, I think he would be crestfallen with the number of people that don't follow the science. They will use their phones all day, which is the result of science. They will do many things, drive their cars, the result of science, and they're fine to do those things. But then adopting an ideological or political view when it comes to a vaccination, which has been scientifically proven to suppress the virus, to suppress its spread, and to save lives. You are 17 times more likely to die if you're not vaccinated, 22 times more likely to be hospitalized. And I think that he would look at that and be gravely disappointed. But probably that's it, because he was a guy who loved to have a great time. He loved to laugh, loved to tell jokes. But when it came to his job, like anybody else, took it really seriously, and would be disappointed if those didn't really follow the science.
Well, that's it, right? And didn't suffer fools. And you know, when I think about it that way, and like the goal here for me, you know, with Eric being the third interview, I got my passion of golf out of the way, and now I've got my favorite person on with me. The goal is, and I hope the audience gets it, and I hope I'm capable enough to pull this off, is bringing people that our audience through TSN 690 is familiar with, and getting to know them, I suppose. And it's going to come across as cheesy, but like on another level, like on a deeper level. Like everybody that listens to the morning show or has heard Eric Macramalla on TSN 1200 or in any of the 4 markets that his show is broadcasted in, I think we come away with a guy who's sharp, who communicates, who gets his message across in a concise manner. And you're a funny guy, and you come across funny on Twitter too, with, you know, how you interact with the shows that you're going to be a guest on. And people relate to that. Like, it's all about relatability, I think, in radio, connecting to the audience. How do I connect with Eric? How do I relate with Eric through sports, through humor, through Parenthood, whatever it is? So my thinking here is, let's get to know Eric more than just, Canadiens suck, or the Canadiens are great today, here's why. I want baseball, I don't want, you know what I mean? The surface stuff. Like, you know, what got you to this spot of where you are in life? And which is why I'm asking about your dad, because I think I've you know, growing up in Saint Laurent, a multicultural borough of Montreal, I was the minority. You know, I was surrounded by people that looked more like Eric than they did me. And I've always been fascinated with the journey that their families took that brought them here. And Eric, how does that like shape your own level of responsibility to say, you know what, man, like I'm smart enough to know what my parents sacrificed and what they avoided to get us here. I better not screw this up. There's a lot of pressure there. Like, how old were you when you maybe that dawned on you?
It's really interesting way you put it. You know, I think there's something to be said about understanding the plight of your parents and how they got where they got. And one of my takeaways as a kid was there is great value in working hard. Not saying you work hard, but actually putting in the effort. Because I have this old expression that I love. It's funny how lucky you get when you work hard. You know, I didn't just become this sports legal analyst. It didn't even exist when I proposed it to the team 1200 at the time, now TSN 1200. It didn't even exist. No one was doing it in North America, but I thought there was a need for it. But to propose something and then to actually become that takes a lot of work. Plus I've got, you know, this partners practice. Plus I teach at the University of Ottawa Law School and stuff. And that work ethic, I think, comes from my parents. And my father was a workaholic. He worked at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, at the Reading Memorial, at Lachine, at Lakeshore, ultimately at the Jewish General, I guess coming full circle. Yeah. And I think it's not what your parents say to you, it's how they carry themselves and the example that they set. That creates the family culture. And for me, a big part of that family culture, Sean, was valuing effort, hard work, and dedication. You will achieve nothing in life unless you completely commit yourself to something. And that means working your butt off. Because if it matters to you, you'd better do that, because you're not going to succeed otherwise. You
know, Eric was telling us his dad was a urologist. So in a second, he's going to tell us who had the biggest wiener on the Expos.
That's right, because he was urologist for the Expos.
That's right. And
I saw many, many penises.
Your brother's another man of science. You're a partner at a law firm. When it comes to understanding, like, you know, the purpose and the importance of education, who's the driving force at home? Was, you know, like we often hear, you know, dad set the bar, dad was the man working, and But sometimes behind the scenes, it was mom that really kept everything in a row. Who was the driving force that kept the Macramalla boys in line?
Mom was. They were both focused on education, no doubt about that. My mom, however, because she was home far more often than my father, ensured that it was impressed upon us that education was important, and if it didn't, there'd be a shoe flying at our head.
Right.
Right. That's kind of the way. And my two brothers and I, all three of us, because I know all three of us well, we're all dumbasses. But if you peel away how I perceive myself and my two brothers, well, these are three people that have gone on and done okay things. I'm a partner at Gowling's international law firm, and my middle brother is a dentist in Montreal, and my oldest brother has got a PhD in cognitive psychology and teaches out in California. Well, all of that is a product of environment. It's not that intelligence is overrated. It's this construct that I just think is so poorly defined. I think it's absolute garbage and nonsense, and it makes people feel less than they should. It diminishes people rather than elevates them. The key to success here is you are in part a product of your circumstance. So my circumstance was a shoe flying from my head if I didn't get an A. Same thing for my brother. So that ended up informing us as to what we should be doing. Every family is different. You're not better or worse, but if I look to my family and trying to explain what happened, I think you're right. I think we're a product of a family culture that really valued education, but that was typical of immigrants coming here, right? It wasn't 27 ice times in a week for your kid who's 6 years old to learn how to work his edges. It was, I don't want you to suffer like I did or my friends did or my family did. You're getting education because that unlocks everything.
Mm-hmm. And so with your life at home with your wife and your two lovely boys, shout out Cheeks. What up, Cheeks? It sounded like you had a pretty rock solid foundation to build from your parents, family life, school, growing up, professional career, now family man. How do you improve? How do you get better from the job like your parents did without like striking that balance? Is that a constant pursuit for a dad and a family? Like that pursuit of wanting to make sure my kids are comfortable and they have everything and they want for nothing while also not turning them into entitled, spoiled children, right? Like, is that a constant pursuit, that balance?
It is very tough, especially nowadays where you can buy anything by just hopping on your phone and it's done literally in 2 seconds. There is no shortage of things to buy for your kids. It's not like when we were kids, right, Sean? It was like, you want a baseball glove. That's a massive deal. Right now, you just go and there's like 1,000 to pick from. Yeah. I still want to sort of be, maybe be clear about one thing, because maybe the picture I painted is a rosy one. But, when my family growing up was as dysfunctional as any other family, right? Maybe that's just part of the challenge. That's what makes you tougher. And being the youngest, the third born, I think I came out relatively unscathed as compared to my brothers. But I think, like a lot of families, there were a lot of issues to work through. But ultimately, you end up getting older, you become accountable to yourself, and you do the best you can with the tools at your disposal. But going back to your question, yeah, it's a struggle, man. I think about it all the time. I don't want my kids to be assholes. A lot of parents, they're so focused on their kids, doing certain things really well. I've told my wife in the beginning, let's just not raise assholes. Everything else will take care of itself. My kids have good hair. I can't imagine anything will go wrong.
Great hair.
They really do.
Great hair.
Really different hair, but they have good hair.
Good skin tone. They're not like, you see how white I am? Like liquid paper. You know what I mean?
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say you're that white, but to me, you're white for sure.
I have a nice filter. I have an Instagram filter on here, But you know what I mean? They're gonna have all the breaks, totally. Brother. They're gonna have all the breaks. Totally. Can you tell me? I mean, I haven't prepped you for this at all, right? And I'm a big fan. Sometimes I get caught with this at work. I'm a big gut guy. I love instinctual answers. Let's talk about like your love of sports for a minute. Do you have? If I ask you your first favorite sports memory, do you have immediate recall of anything? Yes,
I do. It's Cincinnati Reds, Montreal Expos, my first game.
Yeah.
Expos won 9-1. I turned to my dad in the 5th inning. I said, can I have some ice cream? And he said, you already had pizza. No. And that was it. So that was my first fond memory. I remember loving being at the baseball game. I was really young. I must have been 6 or 7 years old. And I really had no understanding of the game. But what's really fascinating is I got two older brothers. My oldest brother, no interest in watching sports or playing sports, although he's built like Zeus, basically, right? Yeah. Middle brother, really built. He's a Canadiens fan and was a mild Expos fan, but not a sports fan. And then I am a sportsman across the board. And it's just so fascinating to me, right? Because my parents didn't watch any sports, right? Like my father was an athlete. He got a scholarship to medical school running the 100-yard dash back in Egypt, but not a sports fan. He'd watch the Canadiens once in a while. It's fascinating to me. You can take three brothers, put them on the couch, have them watch the same stuff for 10 straight years, and they walk away with incredibly different experiences.
Yeah.
I am like you. I'm a sports guy through and through. But anyway, that was a great game. My other memory is my father, we bugged him to let us go to a Habs game. This was at the Old Forum. He dropped us off at the Old Forum. We walked up to the ticket window. We said, we'd like to have 2 tickets, please. And he was like, oh, that's $40. We're like, oh, it's not like an Expos game. We didn't have enough money. So we took the bus home, and that was it.
Yeah.
So that's another fun memory.
Isn't that something too, right? Like, and it's funny because when I think about my first sports memories, and I think about my dad taking me to Olympic Stadium and seeing the Pittsburgh Pirates, and Andy Van Slyke is like the first player that played for another team that I immediately disliked, because every time I went to a baseball game, and my first ever game was against the Pittsburgh Pirates, Andy Van Slyke just always seemed to get the big hit, make a big catch in center field for the Pirates, and, killed an Expos rally or whatever. But like you, when it comes to hockey games in my childhood were very few, far in between. I think I went to 2, living in the time that I lived with my parents. And that was really my first ever memory. My dad, and that's where I think I got my sports love from. And I find it fascinating, like you do, that your 3 brothers all walked away with 3 different points of view from that very same baseball game. I got my love of sports from my father, who I still look up to today. And I'll never forget him waking me up. My birthday always coincides with opening day for the Canadiens. And I remember him waking me up and saying, let's go line up outside the Montreal Forum for Canadian tickets for my birthday. And at the time, there was a McDee's on the corner of Atwater and St. Catherine. I stood in line. He ran over, got some McDonald's for us. Totally. And it's just a memory. I'm 43. I've got to say 33 years later, I close my eyes and it's reoccurring in my life, and that's what I like. Sports and like romance, they seem to go hand in hand all the time. Like I remember Wayne Gretzky saying Gordie Howe will always be the best player in the NHL. When asked who's the best player in the NHL, Wayne, everyone knows it's Gretzky, but he'll never say himself, because Gordie Howe was the player he grew up cheering for. You know what I mean? And I love that connection about sports. I love that connection.
Totally. I have 2 things to say. First, you often hear nowadays, oh, I'm going to let my child pick his own team, right? You got to let these kids express themselves. No, you don't. First, whatever team a kid ends up picking is because they're watching YouTube. I think there is such tremendous value in having everybody in your family, or your kids at least, that you all cheer for the same team, because what sports provides that you can't find anywhere else are regular moments of shared joy and euphoria. Only sports offers that, and on a regular basis, right? Like we were watching, my kids were in their Canadiens pajamas. They have like 3 or 4 different kinds of Canadiens pajamas. Time they're 7 and 4. We're watching the Stanley Cup Finals, or the entire playoff run Canadiens were involved in. Do you know the joy that we felt together? What a great shared moment. Other thing is, I, like you, believe that there's this kind of romantic notion to sports. And that's why for my oldest boy, Daniel, the really nice curly hair, I didn't want his first hockey game to be here in Ottawa, the Canadiens against the Sens. So I waited till he was 6. I was doing it when he was 5, but he broke his leg. So I did it when he was 6, and I planned it out. We're taking the train down to Montreal. We got tickets to the game. And so we did that. And it was as magical an experience as you can possibly believe. Afterwards, Paul Gallant, who runs the Canadiens in-game experience, came to grab us in our seats, took us on the ice for pictures, went, behind the scenes, the ops, all that kind of stuff. Even when we got there, I had a media pass because I had a bag that my wife forced me to bring. And as we were going upstairs, you have to go through the basement, the bowels of the Bell Center. And who was there? All the Canadiens players dressed in blue playing soccer. I knew it would be a beautiful moment. The entire trip, I had a stomach flu and I was throwing up most of the time. My son didn't know until we ended up leaving and going back home, where I had to kind of puke beside a tree. But it didn't disturb anything. It was an amazingly special moment. And I have these beautiful pictures. And Sean, that is a memory that he will have for a lifetime and that I will have for a lifetime. It's so rare in life when a moment lives up to expectation. Here it exceeded expectation. And I guess I would add with both of my boys, I can't tell you how many times the mythology of being a parent wasn't even close to the experience that I had that far exceeded that.
So that's, one of the more, fascinating things, Eric, that, we share in common with when it comes to sports. And I think I don't want to say it's universal, but I think it's close. You know what I mean? That's the bond. We learn to love sports from whether it's a brother, a sibling, or someone close in our family that teaches us, and not necessarily that we have to be in love with the same teams, right? Like, you don't think that about like the Montreal Canadiens, that you put that on your two boys at home. Like, it's cheer for the Canadiens or find another sport.
No, that's pretty much it. I mean, they both had Expos onesies. They both had Canadiens onesies. And I guess the point for me was, you're going to be Habs fans because sports offer something nothing else does. Just regular moments of shared joy, not happiness, but joy. Joy is so hard to experience that when the Canadiens and when Lehkonen scored the winning goal against Vegas, I mean, the three of us are hugging and kissing and losing ourselves in the moment. And we had like 50 of those moments. So force your kids to love the same team. Like, they could love any team. Why not love your team?
Mm-hmm. And that has to be the number one moment that you've shared with the boys, is last year's run to the Stanley Cup final, where they were 3 wins away. Like, nothing has there's nothing that's runner up to.
No, I would say there's nothing that's a runner up to that insofar as us sharing that level of joy. For me, I've had other moments. That first Habs game I mentioned, seeing my kids play sports for the first time or doing something new at a sport they played, that always, I get a real kick. I coach baseball, I coach their hockey and all that stuff. And that's a lot of fun. But you're right. Sports, it's great too, because the Canadiens this season, as we know, have stunk. And it's a great opportunity to teach your kids a lesson that you're going to lose in life a lot more than you're going to win. But you could say it, but when they see it and they feel it, it helps teach them how to become adults. I mean, it's all these small things, right, Sean, that, how to be a team player, how to deal with loss. Life will hand you far more losses than wins, right?
Indeed. And it's a little taste of how unfair it is. What do you mean they were in the Stanley Cup final last year? Now they're the worst team in the league. That doesn't seem, no, that's not right at all. That's not fair. What do you mean?
But that's what being a sports fan is, right?
So let's talk about this team that has 34 games under their belt. I'm taping with Eric on Tuesday. The Canadiens are in Boston to play the Bruins Wednesday, at Chicago Thursday, and then they're off for the rest of the week. It looks as of right now, their next home games, Jan 27th against the Duckarinos. 7 wins in 34 games. They don't have a general manager. They're duking it out with Arizona for the right to be the worst team in the NHL. I mean, I didn't think this season was going to go great. I didn't think it was going to be this bad, Eric. What was the first sign that this was down the crapper for you?
Oh boy. I mean, I had higher expectations than you did. You were on the morning show, were bang on, and you were bang on about Cole Caulfield as well. And that's not lost on me. I was optimistic going into the season. While there was a dearth of centermen, of NHL caliber centermen, I thought we had maybe the best complement of wingers in the league. And we had a good goaltending situation. I really liked Jake Allen. I was concerned about our defensive core and how nimble and agile they would be. But I thought, okay, they can still make it work based upon their experience in the postseason, although I thought they might be tired. But watching this D-core play, oh my goodness. I mean, they were not good. And this was a significant, they could not, zone entries were so easy. They couldn't shut down guys. They would lose battles in the corner. They couldn't transition. Oh, this was an easy team to play against. And that was an issue. So I'd say by about game 15, because I was optimistic, I started to say, whoa, wait a minute. this team, this current complement, Sean,
yeah,
is not only is not going to get it done, it's never going to get it done as constructed. Roster construction is off.
I think there's a difference between a reason and an excuse, right? Like last year, I choose to believe that the core group knew exactly what was at stake. That Shea Weber's career was on the line. Carey Price's offseason was going to be turbulent. Maybe they weren't going to expect where it is in reality. But that point is not lost on me that, this team really gelled together and really found a way to bond and do some damage and thrive in the underdog role. Are you a subscriber to those that say that gassed them for this year? That run, that emotional run, that physical run basically zapped any type of energy they had emotionally and physically, and you're seeing it now in 34 games. Are you a subscriber or a denier of that?
No, I think like anything else, it's probably part of the reason. Jeff Petrie, for example, has looked physically tired all season. To do what the Canadiens did last season in the postseason was unprecedented. If you said to me, "Hey, I'll get your team the Stanley Cup final, but you'll finish in last next season," I take that every day of the week. But part of that unprecedented run was the effort. I mean, I've told my kids and anyone who'll listen, I will respect and value that postseason run for the rest of my life, sports or not sports. It was the most valiant effort I've ever seen of any team. This was a team that shouldn't have gone that far, shouldn't have beat the Leafs, but they willed their way to the final. That, to me, was a win in and of itself. But when you do that, you end up being spent. They were spent, but it's not the only reason, but I think it's one of the reasons why they've struggled this season.
You know what drives me up the wall is when you're talking or debating with someone about the Canadiens' run to the Stanley Cup final last year, and their clapback is they had no business being in the playoffs. They were in the North Division. Like, tell me why that makes sense. Because it baffles my logical brain.
It doesn't, though. It doesn't make sense, so you shouldn't be annoyed because they're idiots. They beat the Leafs. They came back 3-1. That is so tough to do, and that's a good team. They manhandled Vegas in 5 games. Vegas is a good team. It's a good team. Winnipeg wasn't a bad team. It's nothing to do with the division they're in. You have to admire the effort. And this is the NHL, man. There's parity not only among teams, but among athletes. Mm-hmm. The Canadiens did. Hat tip in perpetuity, man. I just have such respect for that team.
Yep. I do too, for a lot of different reasons. They're in Boston, as I mentioned, tomorrow to play the Bruins. Carey Price is not going to be on this road trip. No idea, no timeline as to when he's going to come back. I believe when he's given the clearance and the go-ahead to play, Carey Price will play. I just fall back to, you're a hockey player, you go play hockey. That's what you're going to do. It's what you want to do. So let's talk about value, because what's this team going to look like on March 22nd, right? I'm not here to talk about who the GM is going to be that's going to make those moves. We can get into that. But as of now, I think the team's going to look dramatically different on March 22nd. Who do you think carries more value, Carey Price or Brendan Gallagher, to a team in need of that extra push that could get them over the finish line? Because these are the two bodies that obviously have bad contracts, one probably worse than the other, aging players with injury history. And yet, in my mind, Eric, I think there are teams, plural, that maybe would look hard at either one of those. So how do you think it plays out?
So Price has got 4 years left at AAV at $10.5 million, still the highest paid goaltender. This deal was signed 5 years ago, still the highest paid goalie in the league. Gallagher, first year AAV, $6.5 million over the next 6 years, correct?
Yep.
6. If I look at those two players, if Carey Price can show teams that he is healthy, then he becomes, I think, an attractive option, because there are a number of teams, including the Oilers, that are a goaltender away from being bona fide Stanley Cup contenders. And they look at what Price did in the offseason, in the postseason last year, and he was extremely impressive. But I don't think that deal gets done by the trade deadline. I think it's far too intricate a deal, far too complex. And it's a deal that to me, screams off season. I don't see a team trading for him during the season. Brendan Gallagher, that's a big contract, man. And it was a bad deal at the time. It was an emotional deal by Bergevin. This has been one of my criticisms, and many people have criticized him for making emotional deals. He cried when he announced the Gallagher contract. Never a good sign. I was crying because of the Gallagher contract. Here's the thing. It's not fair to Gallagher. He's not judged based upon his play on the ice. He's judged based upon his play as it relates to his AAV. But I said to you on the show many times, he's got 4 playoff goals in 37 games. Okay, that's over a number of years. Yeah. I never thought he was as effective as others thought he was in the playoffs. He's a perimeter. He became more of a perimeter player in the playoffs. He just wasn't effective in running the net. All that being said, other teams will see value in Gallagher as well. He will be moved. They'll have to retain some salary, but he will be moved. Maybe to the LA Kings.
Yeah, maybe the LA Kings. Works. Phil Deneau, Marc Bergevin landing softly on his feet in some sort of VP of napping 101. I don't know what he's doing out in LA, but by all accounts, he's had a nice, cushy little job. It fits him, right? Like when you think about like Marc Bergevin, I mean, I got to say, being the GM in this town for the better part of a decade, let's just round it up and call it 10 years, that aged him. It aged him, not just, how he looks a little bit more silver fox to his hair game these days, but, maybe a couple of wrinkles, little stress line here and there. I think LA's
yeah, but oddly his arms are bigger and he's in his 50s. I don't know how that happens. It's a tough place to be a general manager. Look, Bergevin has a great eye for talent and he's made some fantastic trades. And ahead of last season, I was on your show many times praising Bergevin for the offseason moves, getting to Foley and Anderson. I thought those were all fantastic moves and they were great moves. His issue, however, is roster construction, and his issue is player development. And we're learning more and more that he failed miserably on player development, didn't have a keen enough eye on the minors, and didn't take it seriously enough. And because he's not, I've said it many times, I was very critical of him a couple of years ago on your show as well. He's not a great architect of a team. He's not great at roster construction. So as an advisor, he's perfect. But as the architect, that's not what he should be doing.
I think that's well said. I think you nailed it, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with, Rob Blake's time out in LA with some speculation about his contract and the future there. But I think you're right. I think, that type of advisory role, because again, his trades have looked good. They worked well. And I think it goes back to an earlier point you and I were making about the Stanley Cup final run last year that, yeah, maybe, part of those moves were because of what was at stake about Shea Weber's uncertainty with his future and everything else. Jesperi Kotkaniemi, 16 points in 33 games, 7 goals. You still okay that he's not a Canadian, that he's out in Carolina on a juggernaut team?
I am okay given the circumstances related to his departure. The AAV was too high, wouldn't be able to absorb it. Then you got to qualify him at the same amount or either sign him to a long-term deal come Jan 1. Waddle, GM for the Hurricanes, he came out and said a couple weeks ago that I was regretting the deal in the first month and a half. He wasn't good, right? Now he's been playing more center, playing different guys, and he's looking a lot better. Kotkaniemi is a good hockey player. His attitude is questionable. I've heard this from someone who was extremely close to the Montreal Canadiens, who was part of the Montreal Canadiens before being let go, and ego was an issue. So that will, I think, resolve itself with age. To me, he's destined to be, borderline, third line, second line type of player. That's who he is. Every team can use him. He's on a great team, and that, I think, is a bit of a relief valve for him as well. So happy for him. I want him to succeed. Given how the roster was constructed here, he would not have succeeded.
What do you think has a greater chance? Jesperi Kotkaniemi living up to his draft number or the Montreal Canadiens winning a Stanley Cup with Carey Price?
I don't think the Canadiens will win a cup with Carey Price because I believe that there is a reasonable chance Carey Price is dispatched in the offseason. And I think that might be best for him as well. I think part of him was hoping that Seattle will claim him, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Because if he's feeling all of this pressure and if he's got these bad habits that have resulted in him being in the player assistance program, well, the way that you can affect change is by changing context. Because if you always remain in the same context, it's very hard to affect change. He's been in the same place for a long time. And so the habits will come back to him. It may well be in his best interest to leave the Montreal Canadiens from a mental health perspective. And I believe he will be gone. I wouldn't be surprised, Sean, if he is gently suggested to the team, get me out.
Yeah. And well, that's what it's going to take. There's nothing else. He's got a full, you can't even look at him cross-eyed clause in his contract.
That's right.
No you know what I mean?
No move, no trade.
And that's fine. I have no qualms about that. But, and it's funny you bring it up because I asked the play-by-play voice for TSN 690 for the Canadiens, Dan Robertson, about this the other day, about with his, limited access to Carey Price over the years, maybe getting to know him a little bit more than just, someone like me or a fan on the street that listens to sound bites or whatever else, that what does his, gut call tell him about whether or not Carey Price is more prone to fulfilling his legacy, and that's winning a Stanley Cup as a generational goaltender, or being that loyal, stereotypical hockey player, one player on one team for one career? And Dan's answer, Eric, was loyalty, and that he thinks that Carey would look at loyalty ahead of chasing a Stanley Cup. Are you surprised by that?
I got to say, I'm a little bit surprised, but I think Dan would have a good beat on this. I would say from a mental wellness standpoint, I go back to what I said. He probably needs to change his context to get fully healed. On the flip side, the one thing that's almost as good, not almost, but one thing that a player who hasn't won a cup could at least point to is, I played my entire career with a team. And that's a victory in and of itself. So I could see that. And he's also a loyal dude. I mean, Carey Price is a good person. And so it doesn't surprise me from that standpoint. But is it best for him? Is it in his best interest to stay with Montreal? I would say for a number of reasons, I believe it is not in his best interest.
Because we often find ourselves in these situations, and we often answer based on how we think we would react or what we would do in that situation. And I have a hard time arguing the loyalty side, because I think I come from where I would choose. And that's, if I'm Carey Price, I've got all the money. I want to say I've done what I needed to do as a superstar hockey player, and I've traveled and I've purchased the things I always dreamed of purchasing. And now I've settled down. I've got 3 kids. My legacy is more or less intact, except for the Stanley Cup. And I've given everything to one market. No disrespect to Dan Marino, but I don't want to be the NHL's Dan Marino.
But the one thing, and that's interesting, I guess, Carey Price is going to the Hall of Fame, right?
Champ, Eric. What am I in
Carey
this
Price, for? I agree. Carey Price is going to the Hall of Fame, right?
Yes.
I think we
first ballot
on that. And his number will be retired by the Montreal Canadiens. I think we agree. They'll make it. I guess he hasn't won a cup, and I think they used to have rules in place about that. But I think they'll set those aside. It is interesting here because I think with Carey Price, it's a very unique situation that if he doesn't win a cup, it does not diminish him, because we've seen how good he is, particularly in the clutch.
Yep.
It would be a cherry on top, but he's had success at the World Juniors. He's had success internationally. He just hasn't won a cup, but nobody faults him for that, I think. Right? Whereas, Crawford's won a couple of cups, right? Osgood's won cups. And they're lesser goaltenders. And I think we're living in an age now where it's so hard to win a cup that more and more players will retire without winning a cup.
I want to do a couple of quick exercises and then we'll say goodbye. Okay. Thank you for watching. What are you doing there?
I was stretching. You said
you got to limber up, eh? Yeah. Limber up, old timer.
Old timer. Yeah, but look, I don't have any gray hair. Isn't that something? Someone asked my wife, do you dye your hair?
Right.
And we laughed for 2 days. I'm Egyptian. I get out of the garbage. I take the shortest way to get somewhere. I don't dye. Look, I've got gray in my beard.
Yeah. Right.
I just don't have black hair. And what it does is, what I've noticed is, if you have dark hair, you end up looking younger.
Right.
Now, my midsection, from my nipples down to my tummy, it's disgusting. So I end up looking older if you look at me from the chin down. I'm so disappointed in myself.
I'm disappointed in you and everyone.
Thank you.
On behalf of everybody. Okay. I'm going to rattle off some names. Okay. You ready? You just say yes or no. Will this player be on the Montreal Canadiens opening day roster game 1 in October next year?
Okay, so not a yes or no if I'll have sex with them. This is fantastic. It's not like on TMZ.
Okay, let's forget it. Let's do the sex one.
Okay.
Carey Price. Okay. Let's start here. Will this player be on the Canadiens roster on opening day?
I like this. Okay.
Brendan Gallagher.
No.
Jonathan Drouin.
No.
Mike Hoffman.
I actually like Jonathan Drouin now, by the way.
Me too.
I like him, and I think there's value in him. I just don't know if he's aligned with if he fits into the new roster.
Can I tell you a quick you want me to tell you a quick true story anecdote about Jonathan Drouin?
Absolutely.
I used to train at the same gym as him. And Jonathan Drouin, for a hockey player, wasn't the most fit guy. Compared to you and I.
Was that right?
He's Mr. Olympia. Mr. Olympia. Compared to guys like you and I, he's Mr. Olympia. But guys like Mike Matheson or Marc-Andre Fleury or Chris Letang skate circles around him in the gym, right? It was just, that's how he was wired, okay?
Okay.
And so there were times where, he'd work out, bleh, wouldn't feel too well, right? And then he's gone, done. Fast forward to this past offseason after his little pause and getting himself back on track, has been an absolute beast machine in the gym, because Jonathan Drouin, and this was told to me by somebody very close to him, one of the faults for Jonathan Drouin is not lack of passion or care or desire. He wants it bad. The commitment to the physical element of training. Whereas if you looked back in his previous seasons, early on it would be good. Remember with his first game, Pacioretty, Drouin to Pacioretty scores. He was all over the place, but then he would peter right out. This year, you're seeing a more sustained level of competitiveness, and that's a direct correlation to his dedication to training off ice. And that's what's been going on. That's what's really held him back. At that NHL level, man, it's if you're not in shape at training camp or close to it, you're done. You're done. You have no chance.
And I'll ask a question we're all thinking about. When he did work out, would he wear a thong or no thong?
No. Classy guy. It's a nice
gym. He's the best player in practice. As a hockey fan, if you know and love hockey, it's fun just to watch him play.
I agree.
Because he sees the game differently and he's smooth as silk.
Dude, if it was an all-star game, 82 games a year, he'd be a great player.
Yeah.
Like Alex Kovalev. You take contact out of the game and defense out of the game, he's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
I believe that. Okay, you ready to continue?
Absolutely.
Arturi Lehkonen on the Canadiens opening day roster next season.
I sure hope so. So I'm going to say yes.
Okay, Cedric Paquette, who cares?
No, who cares?
Oh, this is a good one. Cole Caulfield.
Is he on the roster or is he in Laval? I say that there's a chance he's sent down this season, but I do think he makes the team next season. Okay. So yes.
Nick Suzuki, yes. Ryan Poehling.
He is on the team next season, I think. I think you need cheap talent that has proven to be effective at the NHL level, and that's what he is. He's playing better than he's ever played.
Jake Evans.
Yes, he will be with the team, absolutely.
Josh Anderson.
I love that guy. So I just love everything about how he plays. His care factor is so high. He's so physically engaging. There's like 4 guys like him in the league. It's hard to win a cup without guys like that. So I say yes. His contract is reasonable.
Yeah.
So I say yes, he's on the Canadiens next season.
Christian Dvorak.
I say that he's gone next season.
Tyler Toffoli.
I say Toffoli they will try and move him, I believe. Yeah. So I say he's gone next season.
Yoel Armia.
What, you're paying a 4th-line player $4.5 million? Gee, that really makes a lot of sense. He's gone if someone else is dumb enough to take him. I guess you look at his playoff performance. He was really good in the playoffs.
Yeah.
But what team who has enjoyed any level of success, goes back to roster construction, pays a 4th-line player nearly $5 million a year? What?
Yeah, no, you want to put your head through the wall with this guy. Let's go to defense. Ben Sherratt.
He's gone, yeah.
Yeah. David Savard, who's got 3 years left on his deal.
Is it a 2-year deal or 4? I thought
4.
It's 4.
Yeah.
I I say he's gone if they can find a suitor.
Brett Kulak, UFA after this season, he's gone.
Look, I love his effort. I love that he tries really hard, but there are games, man. There was a game where he cost the Canadiens a win. He coughed up the puck 2 or 3 times.
Yep.
And it's really fascinating. Some people don't even see that. So I say he's gone. But not because it's a rebuild.
No.
But because you can do better.
Yes. Romanov staying, he'll be here. Okay, Jake Allen.
I love him. And you need guys like him in the fold. I know the popular viewpoint is to trade him. I say he's here next season because you still need a goalie who, by the way, is having a fantastic season.
Yeah.
This guy faces more quality shots in one game than other goalies face all season. He has been fantastic. Plus, the ultimate teammate. He stays or I go.
Carey Price.
He's gone. I think he's gone. There are just enough teams out there that are a Carey Price away, a healthy Carey Price away from winning the cup. And I will tell you this, and you and I know this, inside people love Carey Price or just fans. Inside hockey circles, for those people who know, they love this guy. Right. They love him.
With Eric Macramalla, the final moments here. I'm going to try this out. I like to play sometimes a little game at the end.
You want to play hide and seek?
Let's play
hide and seek.
You want to play word association?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. I'm going to give you 4 words. Okay. You tell me the first single word you think of, okay?
All right.
In honor of your dad,
yes,
the late, great Dr. Macramalla, the first word today is testes.
Testes. Tim Sphere. My father removed a tumor from his testicle, and then so he had one testicle. And I met Tim at the Expos event. He was a bit lopsided, but he came and gave me a big hug.
Benghazi.
Benghazi.
Yeah.
Pass.
Correct.
I love
we're playing word association with Eric Macramalla. He passed.
So far, we've got testicles and Benghazi. This is one hell of a word association. I love it.
Horribly.
Canadiens.
Isn't that what a shame? And finally, geek.
Dangle.
Who?
Dangle. Geek in the dangle.
Eric Macramalla, an honor and a privilege as always. Offsides on the TSN 1200, on TSN 690, and across our great nation
TSN
of ours.
1260 in Edmonton, yeah. And then you can just download once it drops as a podcast, you can download it. But all that aside, thanks for having me on, man.
Thank you.
Always just fun talking to you. I love talking to real sports fans through and through, and that's what you are, and you're a bright one as well, so it's always fun.
You're a scholar and a saint. You can listen to Eric Macramalla on the TSN 690 morning show with Connor McKenna and yours truly, Tuesdays and Thursdays at 9:05. Eric, thank you.
I love you, Sean.
I love you. Perfect.